mountain-building earthquake. That's what just happened.
Yeah, exactly. And
So it's more of the ratcheting up of the compression as opposed to relieving of it. It's more of a ratchet happening.
well, it's not so much that. It's like when a fault, accumulates what we call elastic strain energy, kind of the winding up of the rubber band. You don't know how that's going to be released, and so it looks like the Queen Charlotte fault would save. It's mostly a strike-slip fault, right? And so that gets relieved in these big earthquakes. But it's also been saving up some compressional energy that we didn't know about. You might suspect it by looking at the long linear mountain ranges, but it had been saving this probably for a really long time, and finally let it all go at once. So it might have been hundreds of years, or maybe even thousands of years, since there's been one of those type of earthquakes, as opposed to the strike-slip ones. But now we know they happen, and the mountain ranges sort of go along with that. It's a little bit like Tohoku, where Tohoku had, this magnitude 9 earthquake, but for 1,000 years before that, it had had 7.8 to 8.5 earthquakes, and everybody thought that that was sort of the normal kind of strain accumulation. But it had been fault systems are kind of like batteries. You can save more energy than you're using, and that's what it was doing. And so Tohoku was saving a lot more energy than it was using up. And the Queen Charlotte fault apparently was saving this kind of compressional energy for a long time, and nobody knew it was doing that, and then it let it all go.
Okay. So does what happened on the Queen Charlotte fault line inform any ideas of what might happen on the larger, more critical fault lines relative to human activity and existence, things like that?
What it does is it's sort of a lesson. I don't think it's going to necessarily influence anything directly, but it's sort of a lesson to be prepared for the unexpected, I guess. And so, for example, the tsunami warning that went out. So I was watching a movie on TV last night, and I saw the earthquake, and I saw it was on the Queen Charlotte, and I saw that the first solution that came out, the first location of it from the USGS was actually under land. It was under the islands.
Yes, but the map shows on the USGS site.
Yeah, it's still showing that, and that might be right. It's hard to say. So I kind of went back to the movie because I thought, well, it's under land and it's a strike-slip, so there's no way there's going to be a tsunami warning or anything, or a tsunami actually generated. But so the tsunami warnings sort of went off predictably because they're very, very cautious, and they started evacuating Hawaii in the middle of their big Halloween party in Honolulu. And so I thought, well, that's a little overcautious. It's a strike-slip fault. It's not going to generate a tsunami. But then it turned out to be a thrust fault, and then this morning, a probably better location for it has it underwater instead of on land. So the slightly overcautious tsunami warning was probably a good idea, and the tsunami could have been actually quite a bit bigger than it was. It was about I think it topped out at about 5 feet in Kahului Harbor, and so that was a good lesson. Here I was sort of writing it off and went back to watching TV, but the tsunami warning was probably the smart thing, and it could have actually been bigger than that.
Now, is there any kind of big picture thing when one fault might set up another? It all depends, I guess, on the actual pattern. Does Queen Charlotte inform any prediction or tensioning up or things like that on the more critical fault lines like Cascadia?
Like Cascadia. Yeah, that's a good question. So it's far enough north that the thrust earthquake on the Queen Charlotte it'll probably add a little bit of stress to the very northern part of Cascadia in the Explorer Plate, but it's probably very small. On the other hand, a very small increment like that, if the if the Explorer segment or the northern part of Cascadia was on the edge of going, a very small increment of additional stress could conceivably trigger it. But I would say the chances of that aren't very high, but it's possible.